Just let me know when we're live and I'll kick it off. All right, thank you, sir. So I'll call to order the July 19th, 2021 Caroline County Broadband Advisory Committee meeting. 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. Do we have the agenda? And there was packets mailed out earlier today, last night time frame. Does anybody have any additions to that or anything? All right, so if there's no amendments at this point to the agenda, we'll go ahead and push forward. David, did you want to read off the minutes from the last meeting by any chance?
Yes, I can do that. Let me just
Okay.
pull that up. That's the one thing I didn't have opened up. All right, now did that share? I see a green circle around it. Can everybody
Yep.
see on the screen? The Caroline County Broadband Committee was called to order at 7 p.m. on June the 21st, 2020 by Chairman Jason Barlow. Present at the meeting were Jason Barlow. I see a mistake. It was called to order by Jason Barlow. No, Jason Jacobus was not here, was it?
Right.
Jason Barlow, Floyd Thomas, David Sadler, Frank Beal, and Mike Vosberg were in the meeting. The committee approved the minutes from May 17th. Under old business, David Sadler updated the group on the 2021 Vadi progress. Atlantic Broadband has started engineering a walkout, so some citizens may see Atlantic Broadband working in the area. The group was updated on the proposed project areas for the 2022 Vadi grant. The group was notified that County GIS has produced a list of addresses for a large project in the Dawn area. This will be provided to 2 potential partners to price out the project for consideration. The group discussed concerns with Atlantic Broadband and the connections along Sparta Road. According to Atlantic Broadband, the head-end upgrade has been completed, splicing is taking place, and sales should begin offering connection by mid-July. Jason Barlow updated the group on Winship. Based on the website, they are no longer offering wireless internet in King William County. They will, however, continue to work with Hanover. Frank Beal briefed the group on frequencies and bandwidth. Jason Barlow discussed the current speeds of some hotspots. Under new business, the committee discussed the task contract with Broadband Telecom. The group was briefed on the current contract as well as additional task contract limited to the application of Vadi 2022. Broadband advisory members were notified that they should expect an email with an NDA. The committee began early discussion about the steps necessary to hire a broadband consultant. The next meeting will be July 19th, 2021 via Zoom. Mr. Thomas moved to adjourn. Mike Vosberg second. The meeting was adjourned. Respectfully submitted, David Sadler, Caroline County Staff Representative.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions or additions or changes to the minutes of our last meeting?
Nope, sounds good.
All right,
I guess we move the adoption of the minutes.
perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of adopting the minutes of the last meeting as read, say aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. Minutes are adopted. So I hate to be moving along pretty quickly, but I just want to make sure we get to some of the stuff because, like I said, we're going to have a long one. David, do you want to go ahead and update us on the 2021 Vadi process right now?
Yes. So in the 2021 process, which is the one with the Port Royal area and Balti area, back and forth with getting the final submissions. We got all those submitted by the deadline that was given to us by DHCD. They were happy with everything that was submitted. We should be receiving shortly a draft copy of the contract, which will need to be signed off by the members listed on there representing Caroline, including myself, the finance director, and the attorney, as well as Jeff or Tyler Biku from Broadband Telecom, who will serve as the overall grant manager. Once those are signed off, then construction can actually legally begin. We'll need to, once the contract is signed, we'll need to give notice in writing that we're ready to move forward. So right now we're just waiting on that draft contract to come out. All the deadlines have been met, and we're on track. Even though construction can't start until the contract is signed, again, design and engineering has been going on for some time now, and will hopefully be completed by early September. So we're moving right along with that. Right now, the entire project is tentatively set to be completed by November of 2022. And that's completed with everything turned up and new customers being connected.
And I know I asked this last meeting, but I just want to double check that, David. Are they planning on turning on everybody as a one fell swoop, or are they going to be turning them on as they light up different pieces of fiber? I can't remember.
They'll be turning that fiber up and certifying it. Again, we have multiple separate projects within Caroline County. So as a project is completed, that'll be turned on,
okay,
and then turned over to sales. So it'll go in a staggered order as far as I know at this point.
Okay. All right.
Do you know, David, if they,
question?
Yes,
go ahead, Mr.
Jason,
Thomas.
if I can. I know they're walking Ladysmith Road. Are they walking Port Royal right now? Do you know?
I heard that Port Royal and Port Tobacco Bay, for example, was early on, even within 60 days of us getting the award. So I believe that down there may be pretty much done on that end. I'm hearing that they have completed some of the separate projects. Now, we haven't had a management meeting yet, so I'm not sure exactly how they've broken up the two big project areas into smaller ones. So, but I know that some of the project areas, the design and engineering walkout is complete, so they're moving right along.
Okay, that's good. I had just heard that there were some people on Ladysmith Road out, and of course, when you see them out, you expect to have connection the next day. But I tried to explain that wasn't the case.
Nope, unfortunately, not the case. But it does mean right around the corner.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else got any questions? All right. You want to move down to updating us on the Atlantic Broadband on Sparta Road?
Yeah. So just to bring everybody up to speed, I received another email last Friday from Mike Scott. They are finishing final splicing on Sparta Road, and sales should begin there any day now if it hasn't already. So hopefully the connections on Sparta Road will start being available to those customers, and that issue will be behind us.
Okay. Anybody got any questions on that one? All right. Anybody else got any old business that we need to discuss, or? All right. Hearing no other additions to the old business, we'll move down into new business. Do we want to go ahead and discuss the 2022 application?
Let's see here. The 2022 application task contract is probably what we should do now.
Yeah.
So all of you should have received in your packet scope of work from Broadband Telecom to actually fill out the application for this year's grant. The county entered into a similar agreement with them last year. They did a fine job of submitting that grant. Their expertise in grant applications showed they were able to get our application, a good application, submitted on time. So what we're looking to do now is look at this. This is a statement of work that was submitted by Broadband Telecom to us to cover this year's grant application. You notice that they are now located in Kilmarnock, as Jeff had mentioned to us at an earlier meeting. What we've noticed is that in the original scope of work that they submitted to us, it was quite a bit more broad than what we needed, since some of the tasks we have already completed or working on finishing those up. So we don't need them to do some of the background work. In the scope of work, I have highlighted some areas that we need to look at possibly removing from the scope of work so that we give them a more defined scope of work of just what we need. For example, in their scope of work that they submitted, it included management of the project down the road. However, we are interested at this point in getting a scope of work from them for the application process, which the majority of the work that they're doing should be completed by the 14th of September at 11:59. And then if we're successful, then we'll turn around and look at getting another scope of work that would include management of the project, you know, if once we're successful. Mr. Thomas caught me on that last time. I've got to stop saying if we're successful, we've got to say when we're successful. And it worked last time, Mr. Thomas, so let's try it again.
It certainly does.
So when we're successful, we'll consider going back to them to get a scope of work for overall project management. And again, just to bring everybody up to speed, the project manager, overall grant manager position is what we're talking about, whereas I'm the project manager, so I have to go out and actually verify that the work's being done. But then there's also a person that has to coordinate getting those reports signed off by me, the bills signed off by our finance director, and submitting them to the state on time. So that's what we would be looking at down the road, and that's what we've already entered into a scope of work for the 2021 process. So what we're looking at here is 2022. So we look at the first scope of work was identifying the area. So they'll work with the county GIS and come up with a proposed funded service area based on the application. So they're not really choosing a qualifying area, they're just identifying it in the application. Number two, I think we should consider deleting the highlighted engage middle mile fiber partnership MOA for grant application to utilize dark fiber, primarily because there is no dark fiber, and any of the projects that we'd be considering would not involve a middle mile fiber partnership that has dark fiber in place at this time. That's something that may come back in there down the road based on what happens, but for now I think we could delete that. Project management.
David, before you go too far, could I ask a question on the first one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, identify qualifying area. They're going to identify an area that our next grant should address, correct?
So what they're doing is identifying on the application the area that has already or will have already been chosen. So they'll identify it, provide the documentation to DHCD to make sure that DHCD knows exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, and that area, has the committee decided what that area should be yet, Jason? Just a yes or no?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
We have ideas.
Well, wait a
and that's
minute,
something
because wait a minute, you guys submitted the project to the Board of Supervisors back in April for the Jericho Road project. So I thought that's the project, because that's already been submitted and approved.
Jeff, don't, we're not going to mention any project names
Yeah.
before we go into closed session. But
Right.
Okay.
I thought and wasn't sure that the committee had recommended evaluating a project to see, because we had two options, the
Correct.
Vadi grant or the county actually providing money.
So we'll go into that, I think, a lot more, and that's where the majority of our discussion is going to be tonight.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that's.
Nope. You're good.
All right. Thank you.
I think we could actually highlight this because.
Well, you can move to number 4. That's something we'll discuss later.
Number 3, I think we could probably eliminate that because that's what we were talking about. We don't really need a project management team at this point. We're in the application process. So in the current process, what we did was once the application was submitted, I don't know, we could probably leave that on there, but once the application is submitted, later on when you have to submit the final documents to DHCD, that's when you have to identify a project management team. So this is probably a little bit early here, so we could probably delete that and highlight. We can remove the language that all grants will be utilizing fiber backbone as a middle mile with vertical powers, last mile strategy, forming strategic partnerships to include the minimum requirements of reaching 100 megabits per second via FTTX or GPON and license 4G LTE. So the methodology of delivery of this grant will be decided by the Board of Supervisors, and we will make a recommendation to the board for their final approval of the grant area, which is going to spell out the methodology. Identify county facilities. So this is one thing that the application person's working on it. The application force does do. They'll go through that area and help us identify areas of high value, which increases the scoring on your application. For example, community centers. I believe that churches should be considered community centers because of the amount of community outreach that is done from those locations. And if they have broadband, then they can reach out. But that was up for discussion last time. I think I lost out, but we'll try again because we do have several churches that would be served in the areas that we're looking at. Assist service providers with base engineering design. We can, I believe, eliminate that because if we partner with a partner, whoever that might be, they're going to do the engineering design. We don't really need to pay somebody to do an engineering design if it's already been done. Create a cost model utilizing the engineering design derived from the unserved census blocks as provided by the FCC database. Now that's a lot of what the application process is involved. Going in, spending time on the FCC website, looking at the coverage areas defined there. If there's something that's in there that is not correct, then you have to argue that in your application. So that's a real high valued area. Marketing public awareness. So if it's decided that we need a survey, they would take care of that. And then they will also coordinate letters of support from local government, businesses, and community members. Once we get to the process where we're actually getting to submit the applications, I'll probably be reaching out to some of you guys and we'll try to get letters from state government officials, federal government officials. This is when we try to get everybody to jump on board and back us. And then finalizing the information, all of the information that they gather from engineering, design, and cost models to a final grant submission, and then coordinate the submittal. Now, post-grant, again, we've eliminated the coordinate project build schedules with selected providers, because again, that would fall more under a grant management than it would be an application statement of work. So we're going down through here. They can provide, or they will provide, technical design management personnel. This direction will provide a framework for project planning, communications, reporting procedure, and contractual activity. Some of that is probably management, but we'll leave that in there for now. But because management, the biggest task for the manager is to make sure that we're meeting all of our contractual activity. However, a lot of this communications, reporting, a lot of that will be under management, but we'll leave that in there for now. Planning, review the statement of work for the contractual responsibilities of both parties with customer. That can probably come out because that's a management. Designate a point of contact. Probably, I think that may be done during the application process. Maintain project communications and status of scope of work. Again, that's more management than it is application. And this is more management than application, so we'll take that out. But what we're trying to do is limit the scope of work for this so that we can get, once we agree on a scope of work for them to be the application coordinator for us, then we'll go back to them with what we've approved and ask them to provide us with a price based on the scope of work that we've given them. And that's at their request. They provided this from kind of a standard form that they use, but they realized that we need to do some changes, and so they've been open from the very beginning for us going through and limiting what we need from them right now. Some of this scope of work and project tasks and schedules are based on the application, so we'll leave that in there. Here's the timeline. So the applications are now open. June 21st through September 13th, the Vadi Technical Assistance and Project Development sessions have been going on. On July 27th, we need to give a letter of our intent to apply. This letter of intent to apply will come from us as opposed to the applicant, the application consultant, because it's going to come on the 27th, and the earliest that we can have an application consultant will be the 10th of August. There's a whole lot of pieces that have to fall in place on August 10th in order for all of this to come together. So that's where we get really busy.
And the Board of Supervisors has already put in a letter of intent to apply.
Okay. Well, and then if anything changes, we'll have to make sure. In fact, we'll make sure that a letter of intent. The letter of intent is kind of vague, but yeah. I think it may be a little different this year. But it has it. So in other words, it's not binding. It doesn't bind us to anything, but it does allow you to apply at a later date. So my feelings are that if it looks like there's a possibility of, for example, more than one area, then we should probably do a letter of intent for anything that we plan to apply for, just to cover it. So their project timeline here has them ending on the 27th of July, 2021, but it would actually be August it would need to be really August the 10th through September 14th. So I'll highlight that, because once the application is in, then this phase of their contractual work would be complete.
And the price they have in the scope of work is just their ballpark price. Correct.
That's with all of this other stuff added in. So now what we're doing is eliminating a bunch of this stuff, and we're going to go back and ask them for another price.
All right. So that's the most it could be possibly, which at several $1 million procurement for that amount of money is not a bad investment.
And these guys are definitely impressive when it comes to applying. I mean, we watched them work, and a lot of the people on this committee may not appreciate how difficult it is to coordinate and wordsmith an application that's covering 4 different geographically different jurisdictions, all with different plans, and make it come together in an application. That's quite a feat. So I have all trust in them that they can make that happen. So we'll ask them to take a look at these prices and give us a price and come back. Chances are, once based on our action tonight, if we decide to delete all the highlighted items and resubmit it back, then we will get a price back from them, and it would be good if we can consider it and make a recommendation to the board that they enter into that contract with them based on the new prices. This was scheduled to go on in June. It was happening right up to the deadline for the packet, and then we saw the extra work that was in there that's probably not going to be necessary. So at that time, we pulled it back just to avoid us from signing a contract for a lot of stuff that really wouldn't benefit us at this point. So once they get this and make the appropriate changes in price and content, then they'll shoot it back to us with another proposed price. These are all priced. All these prices are based on the contract that was negotiated with Virginia Beach, Norfolk. So they're state contract prices. They have a rider in that contract that we're allowed to jump in and ride that contract for the same price. So that avoids us from having to try to go out and get pricing and all, which you can't. It'd be very difficult to do in the timeline. It'd be impossible to do in the timeline that we have to try to get this application together. So,
yeah, that's pretty standard procedure is to purchase off an existing contract.
Right, and we had the attorney check and the language that they had added into the contract that they have with the Tidewater area. The language was acceptable to yes, we're okay to ride right on that contract. So that's what we're looking to do. So that being said, if we have a motion from anyone to eliminate the highlighted areas and submit this to Broadband Telecom for a price, now I guess would be appropriate, Jason.
All right. Do I hear a motion from anybody, or?
If you need a motion, I'll be happy to make that motion.
All right. Is there a second, or do we want to go into discussion on this?
Well, you can take the second and then go into discussion if there is a second.
That'll work.
I discussed it, but if no one else, can I second it?
Yeah, I think you can.
I think it might be better if someone else did, since I kind of made the recommendations as to what we needed to knock out. But
David, I'm having a hard time hearing you, but I second the motion.
there you go. Now you got a second.
All right. Does anybody want to do any discussion on this? Does anybody have any other questions or anything?
Jason,
on the
if I may,
highlighted sections?
yeah, just if I may, the cost that's listed for everything is a reasonable cost. So even if they decide not to take out those things, it's still a worthwhile investment. I think what David Sadler did when he recommended it was say we can actually be cheaper than this, and
Correct.
we're paying pennies on the dollar for what we're trying to get. Well, really, pennies on the hundreds of dollars is what it is. So if they come back and say the price is the same, we're still in good shape. If they come back and say the price is half, that's wonderful. It's something we have to do. So, I think David's done a good job to try to make the cost as small as possible, but it's not going to be a big deal.
Well, and I guess that's a question that I have, just to have clarification on that. Has the Board of Supervisors already given us or given the committee permission to spend I think it was $11,400 for this, and we're just trying to make it cheaper to help save money, or do we need to take that back to the Board of Supervisors to get approval for, this statement of work?
According to Mr. Parton, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Thomas or Mr. Seeley, the board has not taken any action to authorize the application to be submitted on our behalf at any cost. That was on the Board of Supervisors agenda for June, but we decided to pull it until we're able to get this down. I talked to Broadband Telecom at that point and said, hey, if I can't give you an answer until August the 11th, is that going to be enough time? And they said yes. So we're still good on time, but we will have to make sure that we know something on the morning of the 11th to let them know, because that will actually give them 34, 35 days to get the application together and get it submitted on our behalf.
Yeah, I think the quick and easy answer is this committee is not spending any money at all, just making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors to say that this is a good investment and this is money we think you should spend. And I think with the folks on this committee, a recommendation from this committee will be well received.
Okay, so this is just something that we've got to bring to the committee, to the Board of Supervisors committee on, what is it, August 10th? Is when the Board of Supervisors committee meeting is?
Yeah. Yes. And
Okay.
our
So
vote
then we'll need to
here,
represent this there. Okay.
yeah, our vote here is basically going to give David a chance to go back and negotiate a lower price. And when he comes back with that lower price, I guess it could go straight to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
So I guess we could amend our motion, Mr. Thomas, to recommend acceptance of the contract with the proposed changes, or recommend or just accept the contract. How would we do that?
We should probably say that we recommend the approval of the contract with the changes being made.
So, and that's what your motion is now. So
Correct.
all right.
And that was
Okay. Is there any other discussion around this? All right, then we'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. Make it so. And then we'll bring it to the Board of Supervisors on the August 10th meeting and hopefully have the information that they need.
All right, we'll work on that, and I will get that over to them tomorrow and see what they say. But either way, I agree with you, Mr. Thomas. It's a tremendous amount of work for that amount of money. I know it's a short period of time, but these guys are going to be working pretty much exclusively for Caroline County during that time. So it's some expense involved on their part as well.
I agree. Based on the performance that we saw with the last grant. I mean, I know that doesn't mean, just by having somebody like this doesn't mean that we get the, award, but it definitely will help us out. So. All right.
Yeah,
So do we want to move on to number 4?
All right. So thanks to you guys prior to the last grant submission, the prior year, we came up with a strategic plan. There's a lot of language in this year's Vadi grant outline that talks about universal coverage. I sent out a link to you guys in the email with the governor's announcement of the $700 million. A lot of weight is going to be given if we have a plan for universal coverage. So my suggestion is that we plan on meeting at a later time, very shortly, within the next week or so, with our Caroline County map and look at the areas that we plan to cover following our strategic plan, which recommends extending, current providers into those areas, and decide in a way to have universal coverage, so that when we apply this year, we can say that this is another tier to our approach, and our goal is universal coverage. Because I feel fairly certain in saying that both the board and this committee have said numerous times that our goal is to serve everyone. It's just a matter of how we can get there. So I would.
Now, David.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's my fault because I was cutting in, but I did have a quick question. The article you sent out about the $700 million is coming from the American Rescue Plan. And I guess we have to check with somebody like Mr. Cully or the finance director, Ms. Smith. Does that 700 affect anything the county has gotten or will get? And is this a separate pot of money totally? Because I know there are funds for the schools and there are funds for the county that have been allocated, and I think in some cases received already. But I just want to make sure we're not dipping into the same pot and this is a new pot.
That would be correct, Mr. Thomas. This is a separate pot. In fact, in the 2022 budget or 2022 Vadi packet, there's information that actually says that localities are more than welcome to use American Rescue Act funds to meet their part of the investment in the project. Now, I think NACO and some other organizations have recommended that it not all be spent that way, but there is language in this packet that basically says it's okay to do that same thing. So this is a completely separate. This is $700 million from the federal government to state award, and it does not affect the localities. So the localities will still get the same amount as well as the schools.
So we theoretically have 3 pots of money to draw from: schools, county, and this, to try to get the universal coverage.
Yes, at the very minimum 3 pots, because there may be even more pots out there that we'll try to address at a later time once we get all this year is behind us, and get the main thing that we're trying to do right now is get the letter in of intent and also get the application submitted, and then we can as long as we have funding. Now, they do require that we have funding lined up when we do the actual final stamp and submittal of the application in September. So there's quite a bit of work to do between now and September. But right now we're just on a tight timeline to get these first steps out of the way.
Now you just made me think of something else. So there's the USDA and Department of Agriculture grants that are out there, and we've got a lot of farmers. So maybe we want to get the broadband consultant to look at all grants.
And that's I think later on. I don't think it's going to be at the August 10th meeting, but probably the September meeting. We're going to, hopefully this committee will have a statement of work narrowed down for a consultant that could then begin, identifying sources of revenue.
All right. Because that's something we don't have staff on board. We do, but they have to do other things like, work with computers and PCs and things like that. But if we had staff to do grant research and just identifying grants, that would be a great thing.
Yeah. There's it's an entire specialty doing that, and just it's a job where you have to keep your ear to the rail constantly looking for these sources of income, and it's just something that I myself I would hate to be the reason why we miss a large pot of available funds. So But we'll be discussing that probably at our August meeting, and hopefully have a statement of work ready for consideration by the board in August or September. I'm sorry.
Well, when you talk to Broadband Telecom, see if that's the service they offer, since you're cutting out some other things, and maybe we can just go with somebody who's got a contract.
It is. They offer total broadband consulting as a service from the company as well, and it's all under that same Tidewater contract. So we could
Okay.
right on that to accept that if we need to. So that's what we'll be looking at. But with the amount of information that we have to discuss and the amount of information that we have to go on the agenda on August the 10th, we felt, in all fairness to you guys, if we put that off till September, it still should not harm anything. If we were to, for example, choose to recommend hiring a broadband consultant at this point, and that person were to start on August the 11th, it's still not going to change the amount of work that we as a committee and myself will have to do between now and September 27th. So there's not going to be much benefit for that, but the time that starting on August the 11th and on through the actual final, for example, on this past grant process that we just completed successfully, the letter showing the funds, the matching funds in an account in Caroline County had to be submitted like June, this past June. So there's time for us to identify the actual source and get the money in a fund and set it there. But they do require that the money be setting in a fund somewhere and earmarked for the contribution, not to be used for anything else. So, but we've got time to do that once we get the application submitted.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
So that's it's kind of a buzzword, but you'll see us follow our strategic plan and amend it or come up with a separate plan for universal coverage. And it will have a projected date that we'll be able to say that we have coverage for everybody in Caroline. The announcement by the governor was that by 2024, I think it was, Mr. Thomas, have universal coverage in the state of Virginia. And if he does that, we'll be one of the first, if not the first state to have universal coverage, if he can do it that quickly. So there's a lot of money out there. Pieces are moving real fast, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. So we have to make sure that we stay on top of it and make sure that we do whatever we can to get universal coverage for our residents as well.
All right. Is there any other discussion on that? I don't think we need to make a motion on that. It was just informative. And that gives us more work to take care of, like you said, in our next meeting to bring to the Board of Supervisors on most likely the September Board of Supervisors meeting. So, okay. All right, David, did you want to, is there anything else that we need to discuss? I didn't see anything else on the agenda at this point. Nobody amended it, so I think we're good. Do we want to go ahead and go into closed session at this point?
Yes, sir. I have a motion, if I may, sir.
Yes, sir.
I move that this committee convene in a closed session pursuant to the contract exception of section 2.2-3711A29 Code of Virginia to discuss contract negotiations with two communications providers where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the county's bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion?
Okay.
All right. All in favor of going into a closed session?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Hit the video link and let us know when we're off.
Yeah, if you All
And
right.
then
Jeff, are you?
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I'm going to read down the names, and if you can certify that the reason that we
have
went
to
in.
carry that motion first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign.
All right, hold on just a second, Jason. There's a specific motion that we have to make that is very specific coming out of this. So, and I'll go ahead and make that motion. I move that the committee certify that, to the best of their knowledge, of each member's knowledge, that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia laws were discussed in closed meeting, to which this certification applies, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the committee. That's a motion. I move that.
Second. And now we certify.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read down everybody's name. And if you can certify with your name and that you certify. We'll start with you, David Sadler.
I so certify.
Okay. Mr. Thomas.
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley.
I so certify.
Mr. Beal.
Also certified.
Mr. Jacobus.
I so certify.
And then I so certified as Jason Barlow.
All
All
right.
right. So now that we're out of closed session. So do we go ahead and work on, let's do a continuation of this meeting and discuss when we want to have a continuation of this meeting?
Well, I guess if we discuss the next meeting type and format or time, date, and format, then we can at that point discuss, do we want to have the meeting held off, or finished, or do we need to continue this meeting till that would happen before the next regular meeting?
So we're looking at 2 weeks from now, David, like not next week, but the week after, to make sure you have everything.
So if we do that, that would put us on the 2nd, and it would also give us the 9th if something happens and we're not ready for the 10th. That would give us 2 possible meetings. So that would probably work, but Alan's going to have a lot of work to do if we have to go to the 9th. But that being said, I think the 2nd, we can work with the 2nd. I should have the numbers back by then, and we can continue the contract negotiation talks at that point.
And not that anybody likes to have data placed on their desk the day of the meeting, but for something like this, we're making a recommendation in the board.
Yes.
The second is the date that I'd go along with. Jeff, do you have any problem with getting data the 9th at the last minute? We had to go back that far?
Well, we can't read anything that night. That's going to be the dilemma with everybody. Yeah, you and I are going to be like, oh, yeah, but everybody's going to want to read it. That's why I'm hoping if we did this on the 2nd, everyth's back. Because once you sit at the board table, there's no time to read anything.
Yeah, that's true. Jason's, probably going to be there to answer questions. But let's go with the 2nd, and then if we can get what we need by the 2nd, we can talk, discuss it, and then have a recommendation for the board.
Now, just because we're discussing the second, that's going to be after the 27th, which is the deadline for that letter. With approval of this committee, I will go ahead and notify Vadi of a possible submission with two separate partners.
The board already approved the letter. We approved that at our last board meeting. We had a lengthy discussion about it. The letter's not a problem.
Yeah, but we still have to do one for the other possible project that has not been submitted as of this point. And again, that's a non-binding letter. It gives us permission to apply at a later time.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea, David, because that'll cover us in case unexpected circumstances pop up.
Yeah, we can still drop it if the numbers come back way off and we get there on the second and it's just way out of reach, and we could just not submit it. But I think we have to do it just to cover ourselves, and I don't know that one's been submitted for anything in reference to some of the other stuff that we discussed. So
Yeah, and
I know the board approved sending a letter that we were going to submit a project.
that is,
And I think that's all we have to provide.
let me see if I can get back to that. Let me see if I can get into that packet, and I'll show you the.
That's okay, David. I mean, we know it's got to be a little more specific. I think the board knew then we were going to make a bid. We're of course going to put in another grant.
Yeah, we just need.
We'll just put in two. We'll have two at least to say these are the two possible projects, and when we get numbers next week, we'll know which one is better, or maybe they're both great.
Yeah. So
or maybe there's a third one.
I would just ask that if you guys are okay with it, I'll go ahead and we'll get the letter submitted by the 27th, saying that we intend to apply for possibly a second. If there's already been one in for the first, then we'll make sure we have the second covered as well. That's okay. I don't want us to get into September, submit an application, and DHCD come back and say we didn't know anything about this second one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good
I think that's worthwhile.
Okay.
Is that okay, Mr. Seeley? Just make sure we're covered.
See, I thought we just had to submit a letter saying we're submitting a project. I didn't think we had to do projects.
It doesn't require real specific information, but it does require a little bit more than that, according to the sample one that's in the Vadi. Did I send out the Vadi packet to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look down towards the end of that. There's a sample letter to submit, and you notice it doesn't get real specific, so it's not asking for like the amounts or mileage or passings or anything like that. But I think it does require a little bit more information. Just a very, very general. But if you look at towards the end of that packet in Appendix A, I believe it is.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now.
What does that say, Jason? Or can you share your screen if you've got that up?
Yep. Let me see if I can share real quick.
Are you doing this from a phone or a computer?
My iPad. Oh, it says only the host can share during this meeting.
Let me do that. Try it again.
Mhm.
I don't see where it says number of projects.
Is this what you were talking about?
Oh, I do see it.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a second before you can share.
David, is this the document you were talking about?
But David, once you submit this letter with the name of the project, then we're no longer in a closed session situation.
No, that's not true. Because there's still.
Well, it says you've got to name the project and proposed project areas.
Yeah, you're not naming
but
who
not
you're.
the vendor.
Well, my question is up above that, Mr. Seeley, I think it does it because it says private providers. That's optional. So,
But the rest of this doesn't say optional. The rest of this says summary of project to be funded with approximately proposed project areas. So it's no longer a closed session situation.
But the contract negotiations with those vendors is closed.
yes. And
But there won't be any negotiation then.
There could still be some negotiation on, you know, final cost that the county would provide, final cost they provide.
Once you name the project in the area, there's nothing left to the imagination.
What the county would contribute or something that once we submit the grant, it's public knowledge. But
Once you submit the letter, it's public knowledge.
Yeah, but the point is, we may have some contractual discussions like we're doing right now with these vendors. But once we submit the grant, it's all public knowledge, and there is no, closed meeting about it. But while we're negotiating a contract with anybody, we do have that ability.
Well, my point is that if we're going to submit more projects than we talked about at the board meeting, you better tell the other board members.
Well, see, I think that's what Jason said in the beginning. The committee didn't really make a recommendation of project. They made a recommendation to look into a project more, because at that point we were going to do county funding, right?
No, they recommended the project. They recommended, and I said this earlier, they recommended the Jericho project to us back in April. We didn't do anything with it until July. That's already been recommended and been reviewed. Anything else we do hasn't been recommended, and I don't know that we can move forward on that without addressing the rest of the board.
I think what Jason said, and I won't speak for him, but the original one was to look at that project and see what the costs were a little closer. Not that was our Vadi grant project.
I will say go look at the board meeting, because there were specific motions made on that at the board meeting. We had that discussion, and there were motions made and approved.
That's possibly true. They were based on incorrect information.
There's still board motions and board action.
Well, that's why David wants to send the second letter out. So go ahead and send the second letter out. I've got another.
Then my point is, we need to tell other board members the second letter is going out so they're aware.
I don't have a problem with that. I think David can handle that.
It's just, if you look in the last paragraph, it says that it's non-binding. So it's a non-binding letter, but it just allows us, if we decide to do it at a later time. That's my only, if we don't put this in and the majority of the board wants to go with a second project, then that's not going to be an option if this doesn't go in by the 27th.
I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying the rest of the board needs to know.
And I think that was the end of the board discussion at the last board meeting, Jeff, when everybody said at the end, go big, because I know David said that at the end of the discussion. So go big means adding another letter. We're going to go ahead and do that.
A lot of the only thing I would, and again, you guys are in charge, but the only thing I can add is that the whole world has changed since the last board meeting as far as broadband money. With the governor's announcement of the proposed $700 million. So, you know,
I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just saying, don't surprise for other board members later.
So, all right, let's just do this. I don't know whether Mr. Thomas or David can send, or Mr. Sadler can send out an email notifying the other board members or all board members that our intent is to submit a second letter for Vadi with a potential second project. we can continue that discussion as we get more information to the dates that you guys have talked about, potentially August 2nd. And then Jason, Mr. Jacobus, and myself will be at the board of supervisors meeting on the 10th for further discussion. If there is discussion around the second project, is that amenable? Is that good?
I mean, it's still going to take board action on the 10th.
Right.
Second application.
Correct.
Right. So,
Correct.
so David, you just send out an email that says we're, in addition to the project that we discussed before, we're going to submit this project too, and neither one of them is binding. We'll have more discussion when we figure out the cost. All right. And I hate to be a killjoy, but I've got another call at 9 o'clock.
All right, so are we in, Jason, I think we're okay to move forward with the motion to meet again on the 2nd.
Okay. So we would just do a continuation of this meeting and have a continuation set for the 2nd of August at 7 o'clock.
I think the motion would be that we go in recess until the 2nd.
Is it recess? Okay.
Recess, correct.
All right. I make them, or does somebody want to make a motion for that?
We need somebody to make a motion,
I'll make that motion.
and I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed, same sign. All right. We'll be in recess until August 2nd at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
All right.
Everybody.
Thank you, guys.